This is Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the moment, whatever the sport, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast is here, which you can get on all podcasting platforms. And, of course, their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds. Adam Caplan with some news and nuggets around the NFL. OTAs back up for the Eagles. And, of course, the offseason kind of kicking into the spring session. But, Adam, could we be seeing the end of OTAs and spring session football?
Yeah, look, Mike, that's on the horizon. Just one note before we get started. I was listening to your show, as I often do during the week, and the Bohm comments did kind of sting me a little bit in terms of taking extra fielding practice. I know you're a baseball guy. That just the way he said it was a little bit odd. I would have rather him say, "Hey, listen, I'll do whatever it takes to get better." But he is right, though. Look, there are 162 of these games. It's not always going to go your way. But think about where Bohm was 2 years ago as a fielder.
Oh, he was terrible.
He was so bad, right? He's improved. He's got to have a little bit more urgency from throwing the ball to first base. Sometimes it takes maybe too many steps. It just gets there. Yesterday was a disaster. He wasn't the only one, but it was bad. But one more thing, Whit Merrifield, I was a big proponent of them signing him. At this point, he's kind of like he doesn't have an enormous contract. I don't know why they feel they need to play him. He simply can't hit anymore, Mike. Maybe he's just lost it at 35 years old.
Yeah, he's been an interesting, guy who was an all-star last year, but the second half of the year he was not good last year. So you wonder if he just kind of has lost it and won't regain that form again. But he's been bouncing all over the lineup. He doesn't play every day, so you wonder how much that factors in as well.
Right, and then with Castellanos, it's simply contract. I mean, it's like with Taijuan Walker. You would have to ask yourself, and I'm looking at social media today, people are like beside themselves with Taijuan Walker.
Yeah,
folks, it's about the contract. These are fully guaranteed contracts. The players have to play. Castellanos, he's got to play. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, I would have to look it up. Did they sit him? We know how great he was in the first half. He was an all-star. Second half, he was terrible. Did they not sit him at least once or twice just to try to get him righted last year? I thought they did. I thought Thompson did, but I might be mistaken about that.
Yeah, this year he's played the most games out of everybody on the team, so it's been kind of it's been kind of egregious so far. But they're winning in spite of him, and maybe they're just hoping he comes out of it and has a big second half of the year. We'll see what happens there. But this news today is kind of interesting about OTAs. They could be gone. The NFLPA is working to kind of overhaul the entire offseason. We could have a whole new look. So do the players want this? Do the coaches want this? Do the teams want this? We could be looking at a whole new structure of offseason football.
Yeah, this story from NFL Network, so I could give you some background. I'm going to go back to the 2011 CBA, that agreement, and talking to someone then who was involved in it, and I've talked to this person a bunch since, was involved in negotiation. The players wanted their give-backs. Each side in negotiation, Mike, as you know, has certain things like they're willing to give up. The owners were more than happy to give up off-season practices or some of them or access that people would have, that the clubs would have to the players. I mean, it just was kind of comical, and because it didn't cost them money. And the players, Mike, they no longer wanted to be bothered. Like in let's say you're working out in March or in April in the building. You don't want to be talking football, having pressure on yourself. That was put on yourself. That was from the player side. I just remember, like, this is a big hang-up, and the owner's like, hey, that's what you want? Okay, it doesn't cost us any money. We'll give you that back. That was a major sticking point, believe it or not, for the player side. Just could care less. So this story that came out is, and I know talking to agents about this for years, agents worry about, at these OTAs, which are voluntary, which really have no bearing on whether a player's going to make the team. It could, well, to put it this way, for a fringe player, it could, because if a guy's barely on the team right now, or it's a veteran, if a guy shows up out of shape at OTAs, the guy might not make it to the mandatory camp next week, and that's certainly possible. But overall, Mike, players just want lighter. They want a lighter off season. Now, coaches will tell you they don't like it. there's a feeling like you can't get better without practicing more. But the coaches will also tell you they're used to this now. It's been going on now for 13, 14 years. So what's happened here is because the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association, speaking with the players, they want even less because the voluntary camps, Mike, they're just not important. I remember Bill Polian, the Hall of Fame general manager for the Colts, telling me that he just didn't think it was very important for veterans to be there. It was very important for rookies and second-year players to be there for development. But GMs will tell you they'd rather have them than not have them. But the coaches are pretty emphatic for the most part that players work out. But overall, the players want them to be gone. So in the story. What would happen is there would be no OTAs in May. The players would show up. And I would guess it would be mandatory. I haven't seen the language in the proposal. But the bottom line is, Mike, is the players would not have to show up until mid-June. And and then maybe your off-season program is like mid-June to early July. You get 3 weeks off, then you have training camp. And also training camp could be longer. We just don't know yet because we haven't seen the language. But the bottom line is the players want more time off. That's a big part of this. I know how the owners think. They'll go, okay, we'll be happy to give this to you, but what are you giving us back? That's the part about this. And I remember distinctly writing about this for FoxSports.com when I was working for them during the negotiation. Is that what will the players give back to the owners? That's certainly part of this.
Yeah, and that could really change. Josh was telling me earlier that I think it was Albert Breer who tweeted something out about it doesn't sound like this is going over very well. From who, Josh? But from which side? The coaches are. He said this is not going over well from the coaches.
You never like it, yeah, for the most part, yeah.
So that he doesn't think it would pass. Because or the coaches are not going to back this. I think, as you just chronicled, they want this out there. I mean, they want their players there. And some of it, too, is the more time they're away, the more time they have a chance to get themselves into trouble.
Yeah, but again, coaches, they use the term, they want their hands on the players. They want to develop them. It's very important because coaches want to keep their jobs. They want the players to advance. Whereas once you're a veteran, once you're in the league 4, 5, and 6 years, Mike, you feel like you don't need to be there. This is going to be a very interesting push and pull. As I talk to more coaches as we go along here, and remember the mandatory camp for the Eagles is next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Then they're off for the summer. Just think about it, Mike. And also, again, you cannot be coached. You're not allowed to coach the players in March and before the draft. There are certain things you can do in April, but it's very light, and you can't really do much with the players until the OTAs start. Mm-hmm. So it's fascinating. I don't think it's good for player development, but the veteran players are just done with it. And here's the other thing the agents tell me. They're very worried about their players getting hurt in these meaningless practices in terms of long-term about where they're going to be as players. Because think about it. Let's say you've played year 3, right? Remember, after you've played year 3, you could have your contract extended if you're a drafted player. Let's say you suffer a bad injury in May. Well, there goes your contract extension. When by the way, it's voluntary. You don't even have to be there.
Yeah. By the way, the exact tweet says, let's just say this new proposal to scrap off-season programs, start training camp with a ramp-up period in June, and eliminate the annual summer break in the NFL calendar is going over like the Hindenburg with coaches and front office people. So, it doesn't sound like they're getting a lot of traction on this one. But will the owners okay it? I guess that's what we'll see, and we'll keep our eye on that because we know what. I guess one of the things that's going to be coming down the pipeline, too, is 18 games and 2 buys. That's being coming. Strongly pushed, right?
That's good. Listen, Mike, if you remember, the NFLPA said no way will they agree to a 17-game season. It went from we'll never agree to it. Their language is strong. Over a series of months and a few years, they would agree.
Yeah.
So the commissioner was out in front in interviews this offseason about getting rid of these. Goodell, Roger, I know Roger's language. When he wants something, he'll actually be pretty out in front of it, saying about the preseason games aren't needed. So they'll go down, as you just said, to 2 and 18 games. That's going to come. It'll come in our lifetime. It'll come someday down the road. And I was against it, but I got to tell you, if it also helps more teams get into the playoffs. Remember, we had an extra team in each conference get in. No, and also, Mike, we haven't seen. I don't think the football's been bad. It's not like they're. I know it's look, every 5 or 6 years a team might be not very good who gets in, but for the most part, I think the teams that deserve to get in have gotten in.
All right, Adam Caplan, speaking of getting in, to do so, the Eagles are going to have a interesting back end of the schedule. We've gone through most of it, the first 8 weeks of the schedule. Let's take a look at that 9 through 12 area and how this could go, because we talked about it on Friday. The Bengals game, I think that's the start of an interesting stretch. You had the Bengals and the Jaguars, and that leads us to where we are right now against the Dallas Cowboys. That would be a tough spot there against Dallas. Obviously, this is probably one of the 2 games that could lead up to the division here. As we know, Dallas hasn't done a lot this offseason, though. So what kind of Dallas team can we anticipate?
Yeah, a couple things here. So if you want to listen to the other segments, you can go on our YouTube channel, and you could hear Mike and I discuss the first half of the schedule. But as we move to the second half, Mike, this is an interesting note from Mike North, who from the NFL, who's the kind of like the schedules are. If you remember when we were growing up, it was CBS. There was no Fox growing up. It was CBS and NBC. Once Fox took over, they got the NFC package. CBS got the AFC. Well, if you recall, CBS, Mike, used to have this Dallas Eagles game. Then they lost it, but they're getting it for the first time, North said, in 30 years. So that first game in Week 10 at Dallas, which is a Sunday afternoon at 4:25, that game is on CBS, so that'll be interesting. And then the Week 17 game versus Dallas, which will be here on December 29th, will be on Fox. So this is really interesting. In today's NFL, Mike, it's so rare for a head coach to be a lame duck, meaning to come back on the final year of his deal, and it will not be extended, Mike McCarthy's contract. Most of us thought he'd be canned after their terrible home loss. They got blown out and embarrassed by the Packers, but he's going to come back on the final year of his deal. And Mike Zimmer's the new defense coordinator. The defense will change under Zimmer. He runs an old school 43. Michael Parsons will probably play more with his hand down. Dak Prescott, speaking of final year of deals, he's on the final year of it. They waited. His cap number from the last extension and restructures is really up there. So that it makes it that they've tried, but they to no avail. So that right now he's going to play on the final year of his deal. Ezekiel Elliott, Mike, this is crazy. He'd be their starting running back as of now if they don't add anybody else of significance. I mean, let's not forget they cut him. They cut him, Mike, within the last 2 years, and now he's back. That's crazy. They'll have a new number 3 receiver, Jalen Tolbert, who we saw at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago out of South Alabama. And then they're going to have a new center and a new left tackle who both were drafted. So, look, it's going to change. The defense, the talent, the starters are mostly going to be the same, but the scheme will change. But it is crazy. They're a heavy passing offense anyway. They're not going to be able to run the football well. They're going to come out in 11 personnel like the Eagles, and they're going to be throwing it.
Yeah, that's a team that should be interesting. They lost a lot of pieces. Pollard's down in Tennessee now. Zeke Elliott, as you mentioned, back, so we'll see what that means for the running game. Holy mackerel, Zeke Elliott, the starter at running back for Dallas, who face him in Week 10 and in Week 17. Next up, another division foe. It will be Washington, who you will also face in week number 16. This is on a bounce back to a Thursday night. We had Andrew Brandt on when the schedule came out, and he said one of the things you look at is when you have a short week, who do you play before that game? So they're going to play Dallas ahead of Washington on Thursday Night Football. So back-to-back division games with a short week here.
Yeah, so in Week 11, they will host them on the Commandos on November 14th. And they'll play them again at Washington on December 22nd, which will be on Fox. And that, of course, the Thursday night package is prime. So, look, they're completely new, Mike. New offense, new defense, new head coach, new front office, by the way, new ownership. And Josh Harris gets the first full season under his ownership. Sixers owner, of course, and his group with the New Jersey Devils. We'll see what this looks like and how he handles everything. But because Cliff Kingsbury, who, by the way, interviewed for the Eagles offensive coordinator job, they're also going to be a heavy 11 personnel team. So it's good that the Eagles, they finally addressed their cornerback position, and they should be able to match up pretty well. Jaden Daniels, the first-round pick, is going to be their quarterback. And Marcus Mariota will be the backup. Brian Robinson's their running back. And Austin Eckler is going to be a backup for the first time in his career. Now, they are not deep at receiver. This is a problem. They're not real talented behind the two starters, McLaurin, of course, and Dotson. They're going to have a new center, left guard, and left tackle. Their defense under Dan Quinn is going to be different. They're going to be more of a multiple look. He runs a 43, but multiple looks. They have very little pass rush. They're going to be really good at linebacker. Two new starting linebackers. Bobby Wagner. It is going to be so weird to see Bobby Wagner in a Commander's uniform. They're going to play a lot of 4-2-5. He likes to play a lot of three safety looks. Very average at corner. This is a game, Mike. The Eagles should be favored even on the road. I know this. Watching every once in a while plays the Eagles tough, but these are games the Eagles should win.
Yes, the Washington football team. Although I wonder if that's the every year, Adam. There's a team that goes from worst to first. We can't really find one that is like.
Oh, man.
We can't find one that makes a lot of sense. Could they be last year's Houston Texans with that new quarterback, number 2 pick, and just completely exceeds expectations? There's not a lot of options of teams that can go from last to first, at least by looking at the standings last year. I know everybody says that every year.
Jets have to be the Jets for me.
No, well, the Jets didn't finish
They weren't last, but they were
year.
terrible. Yeah.
The last, I guess the best option is Cincinnati, but, I mean, that's a tough division.
Right, because Burrow got hurt. But, yeah, look, every year it happens. I remember the year that the Rams got to the Super Bowl, no one saw it. 2 years ago, the Jaguars came out of nowhere after the Urban Meyer experience. Then they moved to Doug Peterson. It was like a breath of fresh air. Texas came out of nowhere, 5.5 win total. They were given by odds makers. It's crazy. It's why we love the NFL. But getting back to the schedule, okay, so after Washington, Week 11, they play at a team they know very well. They're playing at the Rams once again. They're back to Sunday Night Football, Mike, November 24th on NBC. They played in Week 5 last year. The Eagles won. They didn't play that well, but they won. They're another heavy 11 personnel team. They're going to come out with a lot of 3 receivers. Blake Corum, one of my favorite running backs for the draft, will team up with Kyron Williams. Had a breakout season if you play fantasy football, Mike. They were great. Demarcus Robinson is their third receiver, Mike. He'd only really been a special teams player in his career. He was so good as the third receiver, they took him off specials. He's back on a 1-year deal. They're terrific inside. They're okay at tackle. Their offense is phenomenal. It's tough to defend them, Mike. It really is. Defensively, no Aaron Donald and no Raheem Morris. Their defensive coordinators now, the head coach of Atlanta. Brandon Fisk was their second-round defensive tackle draftee to go with Kobe Turner, who was a great rookie season. They're not great at the edge rusher, not very good at corner. Tre'Davious White comes back from yet another major injury, comes over from Buffalo. Demarius Williams, who started his career with the Rams, is back. This will be a game the Eagles, I'm sure, will be favored as long as everyone's healthy. The key players are healthy. It'll be a fun game and very competitive because the Rams could score.
Yeah, Rams are a team that I think just because Donald went out, everyone's kind of looking at them a little differently. But offensively, they should be very, very good, the Rams. And, of course, you're back out there at SoFi. Then you follow that up by having to come back to the East Coast and play Baltimore. I know you don't have to travel much after that Rams game down to Baltimore and Washington. I think you're only 2 trips the whole back end of the season. But going to Baltimore, not fun.
Yeah, and remember, it's kind of a short week. They won't get home until Monday morning from L.A., probably like 4 or 5 in the morning, somewhere there, and they got to get started. Like you said, though, look, it's a bus ride over. I don't know how. In fact, I know to Washington they take a train, so I don't know if they're going to do that or take a bus. But obviously, this is a short trip. Now, Baltimore is so different. Now, this is crazy. They tried to trade for Derrick Henry at the trade deadline. It didn't happen. They play heavy 12 personnel. They're going to. And see, here's the question: will Lamar Jackson have to throw as much? Will he run less? They're not great at receiver. Zay Flowers, their first-round pick, did a good job. Rashad Bateman's back. Old friend Nelson Aguilar is their third receiver, did a good job for them. Mark Andrews missed a big chunk of the season with a significant injury. He's back. Isaiah Likely, one of the best backup tight ends. It's two tight ends, 2 receivers. Their left tackle, Ronnie Stanley's been hurt a lot. They're going to have a new right tackle, new left guard. How about this one? This is crazy. So Mike McDonald got their defense coordinator as the new head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Zach Gorey, you might remember from as a player. He's the youngest coordinator of any side, whether it's D, offense, or special teams. He's 31, turns 32 next month, Mike. Wow, that's a big ask, but hey, he's a pretty sharp guy, and Justin Matabuki, who signed a mega extension, that's the guy, the D tackle that you got to worry about. This is a great matchup. This is the matchup of the year for the Eagles, Mike. December 1st, Sunday on CBS. That'll be a great matchup in Week 13.
All right, there you go. We take a little look each week here with Adam Caplan, an inside look at the Eagles' schedule of games, their opponents, and there's just a little look at the next four group of teams. We'll look at more on Friday as, man, I tell you, Adam, we laugh. By the time you're on, we'll be into June. June is done, right? As soon as June is done, we start thinking about training camp. So essentially, we're getting into training camp mode here pretty quickly. It's going to be happening before we know, because we know once Memorial Day rocks and rolls, it starts cruising in through June, and then July is football month, right?
Mike, and think about this. If, again, as we said earlier in this discussion today, if the owners, if this actually gets to the ownership level and the owners actually say yes, well, think about it. It could happen as soon as next year. What will we talk about in June before the practices start? Might have to talk about wrestling and old school NWO, man. Because I mean, honestly, or some of your favorite wrestling stories. I've got some because I worked in the business for a little bit, so I could sort of go back to my mind and my Rolodex of some of the things that I saw.
That would be fun. All right, Adam Caplan, everybody. And, of course, don't forget to check out and download the Inside the Birds podcast. Those guys are still cranking out summer and spring material. And go to their YouTube channel. Just search Inside the Birds, and you'll find a lot of great content for the Eagles offseason, which OTA is getting underway. By the way, as we're having this conversation, I just got an email from the Eagles and Brett Stoshacker for the media schedule. They will have practices beginning on Thursday, 12:50. Players will be speaking to the media. So on Friday, I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about with Adam here on Football at 4. Adam Caplan, everybody. Thanks, bud.
Thank you.
There he is, Adam Caplan. Giving us a little baseball at the beginning of the conversation there on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill.